Meta Knight, everyone's favorite edgy, sword-wielding anti-hero. Sometimes he's a powerful adversary to Kirby, other times he really helps out against a greater force, and other times he's just a bystander at best. Today, we're gonna look at Meta Knight's character in every single Kirby game and rank him from worthless to elite. He's not in the original Kirby's Dream Land, so on to his debut in Kirby's Adventure. King Dedede is the primary antagonist for most of the game. I mean, it's actually Nightmare, but the player thinks it's Dedede up until the very end. And Meta Knight is just one of the bosses that Deeds entrusted a piece of the Star Rod to. Very little is known about him at this point, but he gives Kirby a sword to start the battle in a true act of chivalry and puts up a good fight, being the last boss before facing Dedede himself, so he's a pretty damn powerful foe. While he's not all that prominent here, he shows up, is super mysterious and cool, and vanishes into thin air after his mask breaks and reveals his true identity. A Kirby? He's pretty badass, but very short-lived, so... Yes, I said every Kirby game, no one can bitch at me this time, because we're even including a pinball spin-off. He appears in the background of the Krakow Land stage as basically just an Easter egg. You can't interact with him in any shape or form, so worthless. I'm not gonna pretend like I played this game, but I do know it's a Puyo Puyo ripoff, and Meta Knight appears as the second to last opponent. Apparently he plays super aggressively and fast, making it easy to fall behind and lose, so it's debatably harder than the final fight against Dedede. I still can't put him in Elite because it's a puzzle game and he's still not the main antagonist, but he's a badass for sure. He's not in Kirby's Dream Land 2, so on to Kirby Superstar, the compilation game that's usually a tough one to rank, but not here. This game really established Meta Knight as more than just another boss. He makes an appearance in 2 sub-games, and it's not a stretch to say he's OP in both of them. His more minor role is in Samurai Kirby, where he's the fastest opponent you'll face off against, and is really hard to beat. But then there's the Revenge of Meta Knight, which laid the groundwork for all his future appearances. Being a knight, he's an honorable and hardworking swordsman, and because of how lazy and laid back the lifestyle on Dreamland is, Meta Knight wants to full-on take it over and make him a bit more productive. He now has his own group of henchmen called the Meta Knights, and his iconic ship, the Halberd. He's a lot more menacing of a foe than Dedede was ever portrayed as, and he takes down Kirby multiple times throughout the game when he tries to infiltrate his ship. He eventually does succeed in trashing the aircraft, but he boards it once again to take on Meta Knight head-on. As Kirby runs through the plummeting ship, we see Meta Knight command his crew to evacuate and save themselves, but most of them show immense loyalty and refuse to leave him, which paints him to be an even more formidable leader. All of his henchmen go all out to sabotage Kirby, to no avail, and it leaves just Meta Knight and Kirby to duel mano-a-mano. He offers up a sword again and has a much improved skill set compared to last time we fought him. He's got this huge tornado attack, he himself turns into one, and he's just a more intimidating boss than ever before, especially because of all the build-up. But he's beaten, face reveal, he vanishes, then chases and attacks Kirby as he tries to escape the ship. But nothing works and they both escape in one piece. Yes, he loses, but every video game bad guy has to at some point, and given the amount of times he fended Kirby off, and the fight he and his crew put up in the end, makes this easily Meta Knight's most impressive role yet. Elite! Yeah, he doesn't appear in the entire Dreamland trilogy or Kirby 64, so on to Nightmare in Dreamland. And while I usually don't include remakes, this one significantly shifts his placement, so I had to. He's got the same role as he did in Kirby's Adventure for the main game, but after beating that, you unlock the extra mode Meta Nightmare, where he's playable for the very first time. He's got a built-in sword ability, less health than Kirby, and plays through a more challenging version of the base game without save points. So if he's able to overcome all the same obstacles as our main hero, including a fight against himself, he's gotta get boosted up to another elite tier. In Kirby Air Ride, he's an unlockable character once you remain airborne for 30 minutes in Air Ride mode. He has a permanent ability that's a hybrid between wing and sword, and doesn't use a machine like the other characters, since he's got 2 big old bat wings built right in. And his stats are pretty decent, less than ideal handling and HP, but a solid top speed and the second best acceleration in the game. It's super cool to see him playable in a game like this, but he's a pretty average choice, and since there's nothing to really contribute to, he's gonna go in mid-a-night tier. This game's pretty tricky to rank, because there's moments where he's doing a ton, and other points he looks pretty pathetic. An evil mirror starts wreaking havoc on Dreamland, and Meta Knight charges at it solo to save the day. It doesn't work, and we later fight against him for some reason, where he doesn't offer us a sword like usual. That's a little out of character, but it should be, because this isn't Meta Knight. Instead, it's Dark Meta Knight, who's a grayscale palette swap of our little buddy. He gets away after this fight, but after entering the full mirror dimension, we face off against him one final time, where the real Meta Knight reveals himself to be someone separate. And despite being right there to help, he lets Kirby handle his dark form all on his own. why? Like seriously, what's preventing him from helping? Sure, Kirby still wins, but a 2v1's certainly a lot easier to manage, no? Beating him opens up some dark void that sucks Kirby in, and instead of jumping in after him, Meta Knight tosses in his sword and stays on the sidelines. Again, dude, give the guy a hand. He trusts Kirby way too much with this shit. Now, his sword is the most overpowered attack in the game, but still, Kirby's gotta do all the final boss phases all by himself, and Meta Knight is only seen again when they go to leave the mirror world. Gee, thanks for the fucking help, man, you're the best. I like that he takes initiative at the beginning to fight off an evil force, but it overpowers him like nothing and traps him so his shadow can do a bunch of bad shit. And when he finally gets the chance to help, he just doesn't. I mean, his sword helps, but it's the least he could do, so barely does anything. He's not involved in the story at all, but like Kirby Airite, he's an unlockable character that's twice as fast at the cost of HP. He's here, but doesn't have any significance, so barely does anything. He doesn't show up until later in this one. Kirby finally reaches the chest he was after that's holding his strawberry shortcake, but as he's about to reclaim what's rightfully his, Meta Knight swoops in and steals it on him. He boots up the Halberd to make a getaway to Gamble Galaxy, and once again confronts Kirby for a fight. This time though, he's not fucking around. He doesn't offer up a sword and cuts all the bullshit to get straight into a fight. He's a much more aggressive attacker too, with hardly any time in between attacks, and not even bothering to block yours, just going ape shit on the offensive side when you get too close. Needless to say, it feels a lot different from other Meta Knight fights. It's a slice of pastry, my guy, calm down. He was in such a big hurry to fight that he forgot to use his own freaking theme music, settling for King Dedede's theme instead. And it's really weird, until you realize it's because he's doing exactly what Dedede did in Kirby's Adventure. That chest, spoiler alert, doesn't have any desserts. It's actually sealing away Dark Nebula, which Meta Knight knows and doesn't bother to explain to Kirby. This could have been resolved in one word: bad guy inside.
That's 3 words!
Deeds does the exact same thing in Adventure, opting to fight Kirby instead of explaining the situation, and it never ends well for these guys. I gotta give it some credit for being the hardest fight against him we've gotten, because he truly went all out, and the Halberd taking off into space as the backdrop built such an intense atmosphere, so I'll be generous and put this up in pretty badass. The original game was already elite, but I'd be remiss to leave out the new Meta Knightmare Ultra sub-game. Here, you play through the main game as Meta Knight on a harder difficulty, but instead of just ending after Milky Way wishes, this thing grants his wish.
Just like a genie!
He wants to fight the strongest warrior in the galaxy, and so spawns Galactonite, who Meta Knight proceeds to slay like any ordinary boss, proving himself to be canonically the most powerful character in the universe. If I had a tier higher than elite, he'd go there. This game brings Meta Knight back to another pretty Dedede-esque role. Yin Yarn surprise attacks him and uses a magic sock to suck him into the Yarn world, and he doesn't even bother putting up a fight, he just goes along for the ride. Fast forward to the end of Spaceland, where he makes a grand return as a puppeteered boss that's not in control of his own body. He's beaten pretty easily, but after getting freed, he explains to Kirby what's going on in Dreamland, and finally uses his words. This is progress. But we don't see him again until the final phase of the final boss, where he drops Kirby a tank bot power-up to even the playing field a little bit, which does come in handy, but again, he acts like he's afraid of getting his hands dirty. I gotta put him in barely does anything. He's actively making it harder for Kirby at one point, which should put him down in worthless, but the context and power-up he gives Kirby just barely keeps him out. He only appears in the Strato Patrol and Kirby Quest sub-games, where he plays a decent role, but in the actual mass attack portion of the game, he's nowhere to be seen. So he exists, but doesn't help. Worthless. Meta Knight's first appearance in a game with Dreamland in the title is a pretty great portrayal of him. When a mysterious ship crash lands on Dreamland, Meta Knight joins Kirby and the crew to investigate, and when they meet this poor little alien fellow, the three are quick to trust him and take pity on him, but Meta Knight's a bit more hesitant. He still goes to help repair his ship, but he's not as naively trusting as the rest of the cast, and that proves to be a good thing at the end of the game when this dude turns out to be a villain. And for the entirety of the game, Meta Knight's a playable character in multiplayer, so he's just as useful as Kirby himself, having a similar skill set and a permanent sword ability. The only downside is that he can't use the super abilities like Kirby can, but he can still conquer all the same obstacles, so I'm not gonna hurt him too much for it. I think this is one of Meta Knight's best appearances to date, so he's getting another elite. He gone in Kirby Triple Deluxe and Kirby and the Rainbow Curse, so on to Planet Robobot, where a spaceship invades Planet Popstar, and Meta Knight's fittingly the first to go defend against it. He hops aboard his Halberd and goes full send at the invaders. Well, that didn't take long, but that's not the last of his efforts. Apparently he went on a tear after that and did a number on the robot army, but was eventually captured and turned into their puppet, the Mecha Knight, who Kirby fights in the latter half of the game. After that, we fight him one final time as Mecha Knight Plus, and defeating him this time breaks off his mask and frees him from robo-control. He flees the scene, Kirby beats up President Haltman a little bit, and after he launches his world-ending Star Dream machine, Meta Knight shows back up with his somehow fully repaired Hellbird and lets Kirby absorb it with his Robobot armor. That was a really fucking cool moment, and it once again has Meta Knight providing Kirby with the tools he needs to beat a greater enemy, and here he actually sticks around the whole time for the full assist. Then at the end, when a surprise laser strikes the wing of the ship, it's Meta Knight that jumps to action and activates a cannon to land the fatal blow on their foe. And after Kirby gives it all he's got, he falls toward the surface unconscious, and we see it was actually Meta Knight who placed him down safely. What a guy. And then there's the whole extra mode called Meta Nightmare Returns, which in true Kirby game fashion, lets you play through the same game once again as Meta Knight to show he's just as capable. But it ends with another fight against Galactonite, the previously mentioned second strongest warrior in the galaxy, behind of course, yours truly. He has his ups and downs, but it has to be elite. He's not in Kirby Blowout Blast, but in Kirby Battle Royale, he's an unlockable character with his iconic sword ability ripoff. Nothing special, nothing bad. His role is the same as DDD's in this game. He gets brainwashed by the weird purple clouds with relative ease and doesn't make an in-game appearance until Kirby fights with him. He's got a ton of new moves, but they're not his, so it doesn't help his case. Once he's defeated though, he becomes playable in multiplayer for the remainder of the game, which is good. It shows him to be on the same level as Kirby. But not being able to fend off against the invading purple stuff does make me have to lower him a bit compared to Return to Dreamland, so pretty badass. He's seen standing on a ledge overlooking the sea. There's stuff he could help with, but he's taking the day off, so... The story mode in this game is called the Destined Rivals, who just so happen to be King DDD and Meta Knight. The pair serve as the main, I don't want to say antagonists, but the main driving force behind the events of the game. They got tired of losing to Kirby every single time, so they decided to tag team against him and still lose. Well, shit. Prior to this game, these two really just coexisted and didn't directly interact with each other much at all. DDD hired him in Kirby's Adventure, and they both seem to have joined Team Kirby in later games, but they never had much of an established relationship, so it's cool to see the two work together, especially in all the ways they combine their movesets for these boss battles. It's really, really good. But joining forces with another pretty capable boss and still not being able to get the job done paints him to be kinda weaker than usual. He can defeat the toughest warrior in the galaxy, but not Kirby, so why isn't he the toughest warrior in the... forget it. I like this portrayal a lot, but it's not one of his strongest, so mid. Meta Knight doesn't play a major role in the events of the game, but he is in the background doing quite a bit. Apparently he was pulled into the Forgotten Land well before Kirby was, and already explored the entirety of it. It's also mentioned that he defended Waddle Dee Town from a pack of beasts, and fought off the mind-controlling Fecto Fargo all by himself and didn't become another puppet, unlike DDD. That's all done off-screen though, and the only time he's actually seen in-game is in the Coliseum, where you can battle against him in 3D for the first time, and his moveset translates over pretty darn well. The presentation of the fight is really nice too. Overall, it's an above-average interpretation of him, but since he's not seen doing much of anything, it'll just barely keep him out of the lead. And he's not in Kirby's Dream Buffet, so there you have it. Real quick, if you take your Nintendo Switch on the go a lot and wish it was easier to lug around, you gotta ditch that clunky old dock. It's bulky, flimsy, and really doesn't have a good reason to be. And Accelerate Gaming's portable dock is the solution you've been waiting for. It cuts the unnecessary plastic of Nintendo's and gives you a sleek, durable, and very portable alternative. And it's only $20, so if you want to enhance your Switch setup and support this channel, go grab one now and use code JeremyK to get an additional 10% off your order. There's a very limited amount of uses on that, so redeem it while you can. And if you disagree with me on any of the rankings in this video, leave your takes down in the comments.